Hi ladies, so today the skill that we're working with is making predictions. So we have two books that we're going to be focusing on this week. And what I want to do first is I want to kind of talk a little bit about making predictions and thinking about what happens next. So this is your resource that is located in your packet, but for those of you that may not have it yet, I just want to have it available here to you. So what I want you to see here is that readers use the text, evidence, or clues from the story in order to make predictions. Before reading, predictions can be made about what the story will be about. During reading, readers constantly stop to make predictions about what will happen next with characters and events in the story. After reading, they can see if their predictions were correct or adjust or change their predictions. So these are some thinking stems. So this is what I want you to do as you're listening to the story, as you're rereading the story on your own. Based on the clues from the story, I think this will happen next. I can predict this because next I think the characters will experience this. And since one event happened, maybe the next thing will happen. So again, with these sentence stems, you're filling in those blanks. You're kind of thinking about these as you're reading. So also too, I have some additional tips for making predictions. So we're paying attention to the way the author sets up the story, and you're asking yourself, why did the author describe the setting this way? Why did the author choose to include this event? Why does the character say that? Another tip is to step into the shoes of a character in the story and see the events from their perspective and ask questions as them. So, pretend to be one of the characters. Think about the event that is taking place and think, what would this character do next if I were them? And be a critical thinker. Think about possible problems that may arise and how they can be solved. So, our first book is Noni and the Book Ban. Okay, so Noni and the Book Ban here. What I want you to think about, so these are reading A to Z books that were just kind of printed in a flat version. Um, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read column by column, but as you can see at the bottom, there's pages 3 and 4, and you just kind of read across in the columns, and then we'll go through the reading prompts when we're finished. We stared at a space on the library shelf where a dozen books used to be. No, screamed McGill. All of the 12 Sergeant Rotten Teeth books are missing. This is a travesty. Was it? I hadn't read them, but I knew they featured a less than superhero with decaying teeth who vanquishes bad guys with his bad breath. Not exactly my cup of tea. The library door squeaked open, and in stepped the school librarian. Good morning, Miss McGinnis. I held up my handmade press badge. I'm Noni Lopez, staff reporter from the Whitmore Weekly, and this is McGill, one of the paper's co-editors. Would you be willing to comment on the whereabouts of the Sergeant Rotten Teeth series? We had a parent complain about the series, so I pulled the books until they can be reviewed more closely. What about our First Amendment rights? I asked. Well, school boards have the power to determine which books belong in a public library. Last year, Deerfield removed The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn because their review board didn't like the language and felt that it wasn't inclusive for all readers. All kinds of people from all different perspectives want to remove books for a variety of reasons. But that's a classic, McGill said, just like Rotten Teeth, Sergeant Rotten Teeth. Can we talk to the parent? I asked. No, she said, but you can contact the school book review committee. They'll give the books a hearing so that everyone can share their views. McGill sighed. You're the librarian. Can't you just make them keep Sergeant Rotten Teeth? It's not up to me, Miss McGinnis said with a smile, but I'm glad you're taking interest. So up here they have the First Amendment little text feature here. Even though this is a fictional story, we have some text features that can help support the text. So the First Amendment. The First Amendment is an addition or change to the U.S. Constitution. The first 10 amendments are known as the Bill of Rights. The First Amendment gives Americans several important freedoms of speech among them. The courts regard the books as type of speech. Readers have the right to hear that speech. McGill and his co-editor Ashley stormed into the Monday newspaper meeting, arguing as usual. The Sergeant Rotten Teeth books are the best books ever written, McGill shouted. Are you kidding me? Ashley huffed. Those books made my mom and me want to barf. Your mom? I asked. Did she complain? Absolutely. She's a dentist, you know. Well, I don't want your mom telling me what I can't read, McGill said. Look, Ashley sighed. My mom is protecting us. Those books are putting bad ideas into kids' heads. We're young and vulnerable. Vulnerable, I corrected her. Absolutely, Ashley said. Ashley, McGill said, what if I banned all the books from the library that you like to read? Anyway, we'll find out on Wednesday who agrees with me because I'm staging a protest. He took the stack of papers and slammed them down on the table. So he has a funny little cartoon he made. Save Sergeant Rotten Teeth. Meet Wednesday morning in front of the school to protest the book ban and sign our own petition. Come in costume and we will recreate the final scene from Sergeant Rotten Teeth 4, Zombie Annihilation Plaque Attack. I decided to cover the protest for the newspaper, but first I needed to read that series. So I borrowed it from McGill and read under the covers until almost midnight. By book 7, the hero's teeth had all fallen out, and he's laminating the fact that he didn't care for them. I wondered, are these crazy books actually using reverse psychology to get their kids to brush their teeth? Tuesday morning, I located the webpage of Dan Eaton, the author, and explained the whole situation. That afternoon, he wrote back. I might not like Dan Eaton's books, but I like Dan Eaton, and here's why. So now we have, it's kind of cool to see this in color too. So now we have the message that he sent back to her. So it says, Dear Noni, you're right. I wanted to create a character who would provide dental hygiene in a fun, satirical way. If you hate my books, though, the First Amendment guarantees that you cannot prohibit the expression of an idea just because people find it disagreeable. There are several First Amendment cases that support the right to keep my books and many others in your library. But here is the quote with the most recent. With the unique role of the school library as a place where students may engage in voluntary inquiry, the removal of the library materials must withstand greater scrutiny within the context of the First Amendment than would a decision involving a curricular matter. If Whitmore banned my books, kids in your school could lose the opportunity for a voluntary inquiry. In other words, the opportunity to think, question, and decide issues for themselves. Best wishes, Dan. Save Sergeant Rotten Teeth! Save Sergeant Rotten Teeth! Miguel chanted. He was dressed like his hero, with what looked like salad greens stuck in his teeth. A dozen kids dressed as zombies and chanted around him, stumbling and mumbling to themselves. Breath mints! Breath mints! McGill breathed on the zombies who crumpled to the ground. Pinching their noses and groaning, I tried to interview different zombies to get their reactions to the books. But apparently zombies don't take time to explain what books mean to them. Maybe because zombies can't read. I can't stand the stench, moaned one of the zombies as he shook his head violently from side to side. My brain is melting! Curse you, Rotten Teeth! I shook my head too. I doubted the protest was going to help their cause. Then behind them, I spotted Ashley. She was dressed like a giant tooth, and two of her cronies flanked her with oversized toothbrushes. Ban Sergeant Rotten Teeth! Ban Sergeant Rotten Teeth! Ashley screamed. McGill marched up to Ashley. Go find your own protest, he shouted. This one is taken. My mom and I had every right to voice our opinion, Ashley said. Did you even read the series? He asked. Ashley hesitated. We read enough. You want to ban books you know nothing about? McGill fumed. The zombie protesters booed and surged forward. Ashley's friends brandished their gigantic toothbrush. I guess a good reporter would have stayed on the sidelines, but instead, I stepped in between the two groups. These books are satire. So? Ashley said. So, Dan Eaton is relying on us to try to figure out his real message. Ashley scoffed. How do you know what his real message is? Because he told me. I held up a printed version of his email. For a moment, Ashley's mouth gaped open. So did McGill's, salad greens and all. This guy's manipulating us, croaked McGill. Not very well, Ashley said. Kids are going to take these books the wrong way and ruin their teeth. Cavities are forever. Cavities aren't what's at stake, I said. Freedom of speech is. That's what allows the books to be in our library, even if you don't like them. This is a grade school, Noni. What if the books had been about how to make bombs? Not all books belong in our library, I said. But don't forget what Thomas Jefferson said. I glanced out at my reporter's notebook. Error of opinion is okay, where reason is left free to combat it. Everyone was gaping at me now, zombies and toothbrushes alike. But then McGill broke the silence. Who's Thomas Jefferson again? Wednesday afternoon, McGill, Ashley, and I were seated in Miss McGinnis' office. We wanted to ask you about freedom of speech, I said. Freedom of speech doesn't mean you can just say anything, Ashley said. It doesn't mean you can put just any book in our school library. No, Miss McGinnis agreed, sipping her tea. The Supreme Court has divided the First Amendment into 3 tiers. Depending on the situation of the book in question, where and how the book is being used, the court would apply a different tier of scrutiny. Scrutiny what now? McGill asked. In this case, the scrutiny is the degree to which the school board can interfere with your right to read and get information. Before a book can be banned, some situations require more rigorous review than others. So what kind of scrutiny does Surgeon Rotten Teeth get? I asked. These books deserve our strictest scrutiny because they are books in a school library, books that students are choosing for themselves. Strictest scrutiny, Ashley said. You mean these books are the easiest to ban? Just the opposite. You see, in the library, we're practicing what is called voluntary inquiry, Miss McGinnis said. Dan Eaton had mentioned this too. The opportunity to think, question, and decide issues for ourselves, I quoted. She nodded. In cases of voluntary inquiry, freedom of speech rights are strongest. What if it's a book on how to build bombs? Ashley asked. That problem wouldn't need a big review process to ban because it presents a clear danger. But Surgeon Rotten Teeth is dangerous to our teeth, Ashley said. Part of our book review process is to hear different perspectives about the books in question. If you object to them, Ashley, we'd like to hear why. Gladly, Ashley said. And McGill, here you can say why he thinks books should stay in the library, she added. Under his breath, McGill muttered something about something in disgust. It sounded like dental hygiene. That Friday's Whitmore Weekly was dedicated to the controversy over the potential book ban. I had co-editor Ashley write a column in support of the ban, and co-editor McGill write one in opposition. I ran Dan Eaton's email. I ran an interview with Miss McGinnis detailing the book review committee process and how students could share their thoughts on what should happen with the books. And I wrote an intro to the entire package that included a quote from another former book president, Lyndon B. Johnson. Books and ideas are the most effective weapon against intolerance and ignorance. Before school let out, Miss McGinnis told me that she wanted a student representative on the committee, namely me. There's one catch, she said apologetically. You need to read all 12 books. 10 down and 2 to go, I said. 6 weeks later, a shorter follow-up story appeared. McGill or Ashley really should have written it under the circumstances, but McGill had lost interest in the series and Ashley was just too mad about the way the vote turned out. The Return of Rotten Teeth by Noni Lopez. The Surgeon is spared. On a vote of 3-1, Whitmore's book review committee decided Monday to restore the Surgeon Rotten Teeth series to the library shelf. Student Representative Noni Lopez cast the decisive vote. I went on to include lots of quotes from people on the board and student reactions, but the story opened with the news itself. You could say I'm giving myself a pat on the back. Sure, you could, but what can I tell you? A good reporter has to tell it like it is. All right, that's a great little story. So as you can see, ladies, as I was reading, we had a bunch of bold-faced words. The glossary is here in the back for you to support you, and you don't necessarily have to even use context clues for those. You can try and challenge yourself if you'd like to, but all of your definitions are right here. So now let's take a look at our prompts for this week for Noni and the book ban. Alrighty, so in your packet, as you can see, it says book 1 up at the top and has your pages for Monday and your pages for Tuesday. So are you supposed to read pages 3 to 6 for Monday? The prompt is make a prediction. What do you think is in Dan Eaton's letter? And then on Tuesday, you're going to be reading pages 7 to 15. Do you think that Surgeon Rotten Teeth series should be banned? Why or why not? So you get to kind of take part in that vote that they did with the school board review to kind of see. All right, so again, ladies, Monday and Tuesday, Noni and the book ban. Okay, so the second book for this week is The Mystery of the Grandville Library, which I'm going to read in just a moment. But what I want you to see here is that pages 4 to 14, this is going to be your first reading, is your prompt is make a prediction. Do you think they find the book, and what do you think the book is about? Okay, so you're going to pause after page 14. I'll try to remember as I'm reading to kind of flag that down. And then for Thursday, you are going to be reading pages 15 to 18, and your prompt is, how do you think Daniel felt when he found the letter, and what do you think is the mystery of the Grandville Library? And then for Friday, just scooch down a little bit, you're going to finish out 19 to 23, and your prompt is, was your prediction correct? Evaluate the end of the story. Do you think it would have been more interesting if the mystery had been different? Why or why not? So I try not to give away any clues in the questions, but please make sure that you're remembering to pause after certain pages so that you can do the prompt. All right, so now I'm going to read the story. The Mystery of the Grandville Library. Prologue. So again, remember the prologue kind of sets up the story, kind of gives us some background information that we need to know before reading the story. So prologue. Sometimes the best things in life are hidden from us. They will not appear unless we search them out. But if we notice the clues around us and never give up our search, life's mysteries reveal their secrets to us. This is the story of Daniel and his friends who discovered just such a mystery, the mystery of the Grandville Library. King Arthur's Clue. Hey, Daniel, I found it, Yuri whispered urgently. Are you sure? Daniel asked. Yeah, King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. That's the one, isn't it? Yuri asked. Yes, that's it. Let me see it, Daniel answered. Daniel, Yuri, and Bennett were searching the Grandville school library shelves after classes ended for the day. They were always looking for new books to read, but today Daniel was looking for a book that Yuri's mom suggested. She knew that Daniel would like the stories of King Arthur, which were full of knights, castles, battles, and honor. Excellent, Yuri, thank you, Daniel said as he took the book from his friend's hands. I'm going to look through this. I'll meet you guys a bit later. Yuri and Bennett headed off to the new book section of the library. They were always reading, each with their own interests. Daniel had met Yuri and Bennett at the public library when their moms had brought them for story hour. The three boys have been best friends ever since. Daniel sat at one of the tables and placed his new treasure in front of him. The book's cover was faded to reddish brown with age, and the title had nearly disappeared. When he opened it, a faint smell of dust and ink emerged, like a closet full of old newspapers on a warm day. Daniel flipped the first pages aside until he reached the copyright date. He always liked to know when the books were published. Wow, he whispered to himself, 1959. That was the year Daniel's grandfather started teaching at Grandville. Daniel turned another page to the table of contents. As he scanned down the list of chapter titles, he was surprised to see a message lightly handwritten in pencil along the binding. The message read, "Do all nations impose equal laws?" At first, Daniel thought a bored student had scribbled in the book during class. As he looked closer at the message, a familiar pattern appeared. Since Daniel had learned to read, he had played word games, crossword puzzles, word finds, and especially acrostics, where the first letter of a series of words spells out a new word. Daniel read the message and saw a new meaning to his name. Do all nations impose equal laws? So do you see what he did with the name Daniel? He did the kind of acrostic that way with the first letter. His vision shifted. Taking on the rest of the page, another handwritten message appeared in tiny letters along the right edge of the page. If this message speaks to you, think of your birth date. Birth dates and family trees. Daniel heard footsteps behind him. Daniel, how's the book? Bennett quietly asked, walking up beside him with a couple of books in his hands. You guys, look at this, Daniel whispered. Yuri and Bennett leaned close to look at the book. Big deal, Yuri said. So someone wrote in a library book. It's not the end of the world. Ha! It would be if Miss Matoya caught them, Bennett chuckled softly. As Greenville librarian, Miss Matoya strictly enforced the rules, which the boy knew from talking too loudly about the books they enjoyed. No, look closer at the message, Daniel urged. As his friends crowded around him, Daniel showed them that acrostic spelling out of his name, and then he pointed to the message at the bottom. So what do you think? He asked. Well, what's your birthday? Yuri answered. January 11th, Daniel responded. They all looked at the table of contents to see any signs of January or birthdays, but nothing seemed to match up. Daniel took out a pen and paper and began making notes to himself. A moment later, he dropped the pen. I think I have it. Shh, Yuri warned, looking for Miss Matoya. What is it? He asked quietly. Forget the word January, Daniel said. Look what happens if I just give my birth date in numerals. 1/11. Yuri and Bennett saw that chapter 4 began on page 11. Nodding to his friends, Daniel quickly flipped the yellow pages to 111. The boys scanned the page for a message. Here, Daniel whispered, pointing to a neatly handwritten, tiny handwriting this time at the top of the page. Daniel turned his book so his friends could easily read the message. The message was longer and written as a poem. I'm going to do my best here to read this here. In romance, your family tree arose. The branches' names are as much the same. In all countries where the tree grows, find the tree's root of the father's name, a library secret to expose. What do you think of this? Daniel asked. Doesn't make any sense right now, Bennett replied. I have an idea, Daniel said. Let's each copy a poem down and take it home tonight. We'll meet here tomorrow at the same time and compare notes. Getting to the root of the matter. Right after classes, Daniel, Yuri, and Bennett gathered around the familiar library table and pulled out their notes. Man, I thought about this riddle for hours last night, Yuri complained, shaking his head. Me too, Bennett agreed. So what did you come up with? He asked Yuri. Well, I kept thinking about the word romance and family trees. The only romance in a family tree would be between a mother and father, right? He asked. So I decided that the main branches of the tree would be the mother and father. I thought the same thing, agreed Bennett. But what about the line about the branches' names are similar in whatever country that tree grows? I think the key word is romance, Daniel offered, but not in the dating sense. What do you mean? Bennett asked. The word romance is capitalized in the poem, Daniel said. Do you remember what my grandfather taught at Grandville? That's right, Yuri said, quietly snapping his fingers. He taught Romance languages. Latin, French, Italian, and Spanish, Daniel continued. They are all called Romance languages because they share similar structures. That would explain why in the poem the branches' names are similar in different countries. Yeah, you're right, Yuri said. The words for mother and father in those languages are the same. Madre, mare, mater for mother, padre, Pierre, and pater for father. Sorry, because I butchered my languages there. Right, Daniel agreed. So then I noticed the line about the root of the tree and the father's name. The root of all Romance languages is Latin, Ben interrupted. Exactly, Daniel answered. So I think the answer to this riddle is the Latin root for the word father. The word pater sounds like the answer to the riddle, Yuri said. The question is, Bennett said, what does pater have to do with this mystery? Who is Pater? Friends came up with nothing on the word Potter. Finally, they decided to ask the librarian, Miss Montoya. After all, they reasoned the riddle did not mention a secret in the library. However, they agreed not to tell Miss Montoya about all the messages. She would not appreciate the writing in the books, even if it was a puzzle to solve. Miss Montoya told the boys of a famous book called The Renaissance by a writer named Walter Pater. It was about the greatest painters and poets in the end of the Middle Ages, and the library had a copy of the book. Anxious to find the Renaissance, the three went to the library's computerized book catalog. They typed the title The Renaissance and sure enough found the book written by Walter Pater. Noting the location, they strode over to the shelf where the book should be and began scanning the rows for the name to appear. So this is page 14. So this is that first pausing point to respond to your prompt. So if you'd like to pause the video and answer, go for it. But we're going to continue now to do our next section of the story. Here it is, Bennett whispered excitedly. Yuri and Daniel rushed over as Bennett pulled the book from the shelf. They looked it over for any signs of a new message. Seeing nothing on the outside of the book, Daniel told Bennett to open up to the table of contents just like before. Scanning this page, they searched for the familiar penciled handwriting. This time they found no words. However, they did notice one chapter title underlined in pencil. The title was called Andrea del Sarto. Del Sarto was the name of the principal of Grandville. My grandfather worked here, Daniel said. So go to that chapter, Yuri urged. Okay, Bennett whispered as he flipped to the pages. At the beginning of the Del Sarto chapter, the boys once again saw the neat, small handwriting in the margin. The short note read, "Look above your father's name. The answer lies there." What do you think that means? Yuri asked, looking over Daniel's shoulder. Well, my dad's name is Virgil, Daniel answered, now convinced that these messages were directed at him. Hey, we just talked about Virgil in class last month. He wrote a long, famous poem called the Aeneid. It's all about the founding of Rome by some guy named Aeneas, Bennett said. Okay, let's find the Aeneid, Daniel said. Virgil reveals a secret. A few minutes later, they found Virgil's The Aeneid excitedly pulled the book from the shelf. As before, they looked at the table of contents for a new message. This time, however, they saw nothing. Daniel scanned the first pages of the book without finding anything. After several minutes of useless searching, all three of them slumped down to the carpet between the tall shelves. This can't be right, Yuri complained. We can't have followed all of the messages to run into a dead end like this. Yuri, didn't you write down the last message? Daniel asked. Yes, here it is, Yuri answered, pulling out a scrap of paper from his pocket. Daniel reread the message and a smile broke across his face. We didn't read the message closely enough, Daniel said. It told us the answer is above my father's name. Bennett reached into the shelves where the book had sat. He closed his eyes as he felt along the bottom of the shelf that sat just above the Aeneid. His hand stopped. He opened his eyes and smiled at Yuri and Daniel. Then he pulled down a dark brown envelope that had been glued to the underside of the shelf. Written in the handwriting of all the other messages was the word Daniel. Yuri and Bennett watched as Daniel, with trembling fingers, opened the envelope. Inside was a letter. Daniel, my boy, if you are reading this, then you have solved the mystery of the Grandville Library, probably with the help from Yuri and Bennett. I am so proud of you. The clues were not easy to follow. Only students who think carefully, love language, and notice the tiniest details would be able to arrive at this point. Boys, I watched your love of reading grow from when you were very small. I placed these clues knowing that your love of reading continued to grow as you would unlock the secret. To discover the great prize that awaits you, find Mr. Slovak, the custodian, and simply say, "We seek the heart of Granville." Say it exactly this way, and he will show you the rest. Love, Grandpa. Okay, so this is our second pausing point for Thursday's prompt. So if you want to pause the video at this point in time and respond to the prompt, go for it. And now we're going to continue to our last section. The Heart of Granville. The boys found themselves following Mr. Slovak through long corridors crammed with cleaning supplies, broken desks, and surplus library shelves. At the end of the corridor, they entered a crowded, dusty, unlocked storage room. It was dark and packed with library shelves and stacks of books. Mr. Slovak stopped at a large bookshelf against the back wall and faced the boys. "Here it is," he said. "Everything else you'll find inside. And of course, we'll never say one word of this to anyone else." He then pulled the shelf away from the wall. The boys crowded around and noticed a small heart painted in dark red on the wall behind the shelf. Mr. Slovak pressed the heart, and the boys heard a clinking of a lock. Immediately, the outlines of a small door appeared in the wall. Daniel, Yuri, and Bennett looked at each other with nervous smiles. "Mr. Slovak, should we—" But before they could finish, he vanished. "Well, here we go," Daniel whispered as they pressed on the secret door. The door opened to a large room sunken several feet below them, at the foot of wide wooden stairs. It was the room of their dreams. Huge, overstuffed red velvet couches and chairs were scattered around. Chessboards and checkerboards made of polished wood and ivory sat on dark wood tables throughout. A full suit of armor from a medieval knight stood, staring at them from the corner. A Siamese cat leaped down from one of the sofas and began purring. Old maps of Africa and Asia were framed on the walls. Bookshelves lined the room. But they were not like the ordinary bookshelves above in the library. All of these books were leather-bound works from decades ago, names the boys had never heard of. But something about the titles promised exciting mysteries and a great adventure. Sitting on the table in the center of the room, Daniel noticed a large leather book. In red letters on the cover was the word "Welcome." They walked over, opened it up, and read the message inside. "Greetings, friends. Welcome to the secret reading room. You share a great privilege with the wisest students of Grandville. When the Grandville School was first built in 1880, the founder, Weston Grandville, had this room added as a secret reading room for only the most observant students who loved reading. He decreed that to gain access, a student had to solve a series of clues planted by a Grandville teacher. Whenever a teacher finds a student who loves reading, they create a pathway of complex clues. You are here because a teacher at Grandville saw promise in you, and you succeeded. This room is yours to enjoy for as long as you stay at Grandville, but know this: You must keep the secret. If you tell anyone about the room, it will be shut forever. Mr. Grandville demanded the will of the school. Only those who earn the privilege of the secret room may enjoy it. So congratulations, you have solved the mystery of the Grandville Library. All right, ladies, so now there's the glossary at the back again, those bold-faced words that we came across during the reading. They are defined for you here. You don't need to use context clues, but if you want to challenge yourself to kind of do that as you read, I encourage that. I hope that you enjoyed the story with all the pictures in color. Thank you so much. I'm just going to go back to the last page of our reading prompts for this week to go over our additional assignments that will be located in ReadWorks. So ladies, at the bottom of page 6 of your packet, this is where it says the ReadWorks assignments for this week are Legends of the Goddess Tin Hau and Cats Can Save the Day. Both of those are located in the Assignments tab on ReadWorks. You all have all of your login information. And then again, don't forget to send Miss Eggink a picture of your reading log each Friday to receive credit. This includes pages 5 and 6 of this packet. This can be emailed or sent via the Remind app. Okay, so again, make sure somebody sends your completed reading log to me on Friday so that you can receive credit. Thank you so much, ladies, and I hope you enjoyed the books for this week.